My wife, now in her 60s, sued me for divorce just to have a silver-haired wedding with her first love. I was utterly baffled. Victoria Miller, does the life we've built over half a century mean less to you than a man who vanished for decades? She looked down, saying nothing, her eyes fixed on a photograph of Ethan Pierce as tears streamed down her face. I talked myself hoarse, trying to change her mind, suffering through sleepless nights of depression. Ultimately, we ended up in court. She declared, "If you don't grant this divorce, I'll kill myself." In that moment, I felt a sense of release. I agreed to the divorce. I gave her back her freedom, and in return, I got a second chance at life. I agree to the divorce. In the courtroom, I looked at Victoria Miller's red-rimmed eyes and sighed deeply. I was giving up on 40 years of marriage. Everyone was stunned. My lawyer had said the evidence was insufficient to prove the marriage had irretrievably broken down. The court was unlikely to grant the divorce and would probably just recommend counseling. Victoria's mouth fell slightly open, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she remained silent. The judge's gavel fell, finalizing the decision. Victoria and I signed the divorce papers, then went to the city hall to process the paperwork, officially ending our 40-year marriage. Onlookers shook their heads and sighed, murmuring about why people our age would cause such a fuss. Victoria didn't care. After walking out of the building, she smiled at me and said, "For 40 years, you've always been a good man." Was she praising me? All I felt was irony. 40 years of life together, and all I got was a good man card. What a joke our marriage had been. Does being a good man mean you deserve to be bullied? Does being a good man mean you have to endure baseless pain? I had so many questions for Victoria, but seeing her face, radiant with the dream of a happy future, I fell silent. After all, her luggage had been packed and sent to her first love, Ethan Pierce, long ago. She hadn't packed many clothes, but everything she took was related to Ethan. Things like the designer watch and bracelet she'd bought for him. In our 40 years of marriage, the only thing Victoria ever gave me was a belt. I still use it to this day. There was also a diary and a photo album, things I had never seen before. When I was desperately trying to save our marriage, she showed them to me. Every page of the diary was filled with her longing and nostalgia for Ethan Pierce. She remembered every detail, from the day they met to the day they parted. The album was filled with photos of the two of them, along with pictures of Ethan from every year that followed. It was only then that I realized that for the entire 40 years of our marriage, Victoria had been secretly following Ethan's life. I remember on our wedding day, Victoria, the bride, disappeared for nearly an hour before she finally showed up. She confessed she had gone to the airport to see Ethan off, claiming it was for a final goodbye. I loved her, so I understood and accepted it. I thought she had finally put the past behind her and was ready to build a good life with me. Who would have thought that after 40 years things could still fall apart? Onconca car horn snapped me out of my thoughts. The taxi Victoria had called was here. "Thank you for letting me go." She said one last thing to me, then turned and hurried into the cab. She was like a bird escaping a cage, flying towards her freedom and happiness. I stood there, stunned. When I came to my senses, I stumbled, nearly falling. A tightness spread through my chest, and I quickly took an emergency heart pill, letting me go. Those 3 words were so heavy, so humiliating. Ever since we met, I had given Victoria my whole heart. She was the center of my world. She didn't like to cook or wash dishes. I never let her touch a greasy pan or a wet sponge. She didn't like mangoes. Even though I loved them, I never bought any. Once she craved a special meat pie from the next city over. The next morning, I drove through a storm to get it for her. There were countless gestures like that, too many to count. So how did I become her cage, the rope that bound her? Was it simply because I married her? I returned home in a daze. My 2 children were waiting in the living room. When they saw me return alone, their expressions soured. Still, my daughter Ivy took a deep breath and asked, "Dad, where's Mom?" "Gone," I replied wearily, slumping onto the sofa. "Dad, I'm telling you, you're just too stubborn. You had to drag this out until it became a total mess." So embarrassing, my suggestion was perfect. Why didn't you just agree to it?
My son Leo demanded.
I looked up at Leo, my face a mask of disappointment. I had always been strict with them. When Leo was 10, he hit another kid in the head with a brick. I gave him a harsh spanking and dragged him over to apologize. When Ivy secretly threw away another child's pencil case, I made her apologize as well. But Victoria always coddled them, so for the longest time they were closer to her. When Victoria first asked for a divorce, they came up with a compromise. Let Victoria and Ethan just have the wedding ceremony to fulfill her lifelong dream without officially divorcing me. I was so furious I flipped the dining table, and they accused me of being inflexible. They kept saying how even Uncle Pierce could understand and compromise, so why couldn't I? Seeing me silent, Ivy started complaining too. Now that Mom's gone, who's going to watch my kids? Seriously. If you had just listened to Leo, it wouldn't have come to this, she said, crossing her arms and pouting. Why don't you try persuading her? I asked, my anger rising. Every time we argued, they always found fault with me, as if Victoria was blameless. I had cried, I had pleaded, I'd even gone on a hunger strike. But Victoria didn't care. All she wanted was to marry Ethan and spend the rest of her life with him. What else could I do? Dad, you were the one who wouldn't compromise. How can you get mad at us now? Leo retorted, his brow furrowed in anger. No wonder Mom wants to leave you at her age. You really need to take a good look at yourself, Ivy said, rolling her eyes at me. You two, get out. I don't want to see you right now. I clutched my chest, so angry I couldn't even shout. The siblings exchanged a glance and sullenly left. The house felt even emptier. But what had I done wrong? I couldn't stand the silence, so I went to a nearby park and sat on a bench, staring blankly at the sky. Only the warmth of the sun offered any comfort. I took out my phone and found a photo of Victoria and me taken in this same park 6 months ago. We were all smiles then, a perfect picture of happiness. Now, 6 months later, we were going our separate ways. Life truly is unpredictable. I sighed, and a wave of endless torment and loneliness washed over me. I thought I had let go, but why did Victoria's image keep haunting my mind? Would Ethan dump her again? Does Ethan know what she likes to eat? Winter is coming. What about her chronic arthritis? On New Year's Day, who will make her favorite mackerel dumplings? Will she miss me? As these thoughts swirled, I, an old man with one foot in the grave, began to cry like a child. I had loved her too much. Stop thinking about her. You have a new life of your own. A familiar voice spoke beside me. I looked up sharply and saw a man in a trench coat, his hat pulled down low, walking past. The last time I saw him was also in this park, right when Victoria was demanding a divorce. He had approached me, his hat hiding his face, and handed me a contract. He said something about trading Victoria's freedom for my rebirth. I was furious at the time, thinking it was some kind of street performance art. I signed it without a second thought, just as a way to vent my anger. I never expected to see him again, but he could just be messing with me. After all, when you're down on your luck, even drinking water feels like it gets stuck in your teeth. I stayed out until late at night before heading home. My thoughts inevitably drifted back to Victoria, the longing growing more intense. The next morning, I couldn't resist sending her a message. Have you arrived? Are you okay? Victoria replied with a photo. It was a picture of her and Ethan. Her arm was linked through his, a blissful smile on her face. It felt like she was mocking my solitude. The knot in my chest tightened. Then another message from Victoria came through. Leo and Ivy are coming over in a couple of days. Don't give them a hard time. A shiver ran down my spine. My phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I felt like an old, abandoned wolf. A wife I could never warm, children I could never win over. They were all rushing to their new home, leaving me alone in my grief, curled up on the sofa all night, sleepless. The next day, Ivy video called me. I thought she might be calling to comfort or apologize. But as soon as I answered, the screen filled with the sight of Victoria, Ethan, and Leo all happily making dumplings together. My grandson and granddaughter were running around them. In that instant, the pain in my heart was so sharp it was suffocating. Ivy, on the other hand, was ecstatic. "Dad, look how huge Uncle Pierce's house is, and the decoration is so luxurious. Uncle Pierce said we can stay as long as we want. Uncle Pierce is so kind, much better tempered than you. No wonder Mom likes him." Every word, punctuated by the sounds of laughter from their dumpling-making party, was like a knife twisting in my heart. I couldn't listen anymore and hung up. But then, the phone rang again. It was Victoria. I hesitated before answering. "Sincere, we're all old enough. Why are you getting angry with the children?" But the voice wasn't Victoria's. It was Ethan Pierce. "Is that all you called to say?" I asked, my voice cold. "Of course not," Ethan chuckled. "Thank you for being willing to let Vicky go. She wasn't happy with you." I froze. That phrase again, "let go." It was one thing for Victoria to say it, but what right did Ethan have? After all, he was the one who went abroad and broke up with her in the first place. "Honey, who's on the phone?" Victoria's voice drifted from the background. "It's Sincere, calling to wish us happiness," Ethan replied with a laugh. "Well, wish him a happy single life, too." Victoria's voice was full of glee. "Did you hear that, Sincere? She wishes you happiness, too," Ethan said, his tone dripping with amusement, before hanging up. That familiar word, honey, now belonged to someone else. Happiness? Over 60 and all alone? How could I possibly be happy? I would only sink deeper into a stupor. For the next few days, my social media feed was flooded with happy posts from Victoria, Ivy, and Leo at Ethan's house. Even the wedding photos they took included Ivy, Leo, my granddaughter, and my grandson. I watched, my heart filled with rage. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and called to confront Victoria. She was completely unconcerned. "Ethan doesn't have any children of his own, so it gets lonely. I just asked Leo and Ivy to join in to liven things up. It's just a few pictures. What's there to be so angry about?" she said flatly. "Is this really about a few pictures?" My lungs felt like they were about to explode. I gritted my teeth. What will people think of me? Besides, today it's a family photo. Is tomorrow going to be them calling Ethan Dad? Are you all just playing me for a fool? I couldn't help but clench my fists. The kids are grown-ups. They have their own minds. "You shouldn't try to control them," Victoria said, taking a deep breath, clearly annoyed. "Besides, can't you have some compassion? Let Ethan feel the warmth of a family in his old age. Think of it as a good deed." I hung up, furious. In my rage, I threw away every gift Victoria had ever given me, and with them the heartfelt cards. "Happy birthday, I love you every day. This Christmas is a bit cold, but I will warm you." Every word was so sincere, professing her love for me. After 40 years together, why did she abandon me? Why was her heart always with someone else? I could never understand, but it didn't matter anymore. We had already gone our separate ways. I was only torturing myself. My old friends heard about my situation and started dragging me out to take my mind off things. Victoria never used to let me drink. Now I could enjoy a few glasses. Victoria never used to let me go fishing. Now I could spend a whole day by the lake. Victoria never used to let me play mahjong with my friends. Now I could play round after round, not caring if I won or lost, just for the fun of it. With company, my mood finally started to improve. One day, after returning from a fishing trip, a courier delivered a package. I opened it to find a wedding invitation from Victoria and Ethan. Soon after, my son Leo called. "Dad, are you coming to the wedding?" I was silent for a moment, not knowing how to respond. Then, Ivy's voice came through. "Dad, you should be the bigger person and wish Mom happiness. The victim should wish the perpetrator happiness?" What kind of logic was that? But I still agreed. I wanted to see just how wonderful this silver-haired wedding of Victoria and Ethan would be. So I bought a ticket to their city. The day of the wedding. The venue was bustling. Ivy and Leo were busy running around. I found a seat by myself. Grandpa. A familiar child's voice. I recognized it as my grandson's. I turned quickly, only to see him and my granddaughter circling around Ethan Pierce. It turned out they weren't calling for me. In just over 10 days, Ethan had stolen every one of my family roles. He shot me a smile and walked over. Sincere, it's so good you could make it. Would you like to come up on stage and say a few words later? Vicky and I would love to have your blessing. My grandson and granddaughter hid behind him, peering at me timidly, as if I were a monster. I'll pass, I said, shaking my head. Their wedding. What was I, the ex-husband, going to do on stage? It was just a deliberate attempt to humiliate me. Ethan didn't press the issue and walked away, leading my grandchildren by the hand. The sight made my eyes burn and my heart turn to ice. The wedding began. As a romantic song played, Ethan led Victoria onto the stage by the hand. Ivy and the others followed behind them. The crowd cheered, the atmosphere electric. Only I sat in silence, a stark contrast to everything around me. Watching as Victoria and Ethan exchanged rings, a dull ache spreading through my chest. Images from my own wedding to Victoria flashed through my mind. Next, let's have Mr. Pierce give the children their gifts for the change of address, the host announced with a smile. Gifts for a change of address? I froze, a tremor running through my body. On stage, Ethan took out 4 red envelopes, first giving them to Ivy and Leo. The siblings happily accepted them and called out sweetly, "Dad!" Instantly, my heart seized as if struck by a sledgehammer. They had switched their allegiance so easily. And Victoria didn't stop them. Instead, she smiled with satisfaction. Ethan then took out 2 more envelopes and handed them to my granddaughter and grandson. They called out in their young voices. Grandpa, the hall erupted in thunderous applause. Everyone was cheering. Was this the grand spectacle they had invited me to witness? The pain in my chest intensified. I fumbled for my emergency heart medication, only to find my pocket empty. Finally, I pitched forward and collapsed. The crowd gasped in shock. Sincere, Dad, in a daze, I thought I heard the voices of Victoria and my children. Then another voice whispered in my ear. Ethan's voice, full of scorn. Sincere Clark, you can die in peace now. I'll find a way to inherit your fortune. Enjoy the devotion of your children and the care of your wife. I tried to say something, but I had no strength left. I lost consciousness. I don't know how much time passed, but an anxious voice buzzed in my ear. Sincere, Sincere, wake up. How can you still be sleeping? It's your wedding day. It's time to go pick up the bride. I slowly opened my eyes and stared at the woman before me. I was stunned. Mom, what are you standing there for? Go get your bride, my mother urged impatiently. Get the bride? I was stunned again. I looked around the room and suddenly saw my reflection in the mirror. I looked like I did 40 years ago. I was reborn. If that was the case, I wouldn't repeat the mistakes of my past life. I went to pick up the bride as planned. Just like in my previous life, Victoria wasn't home. No one knew where she was. Sincere, do you know where Vicky went? We can't find her anywhere, her father, Robert Miller, said anxiously. Yes, you know her best, her mother, Susan Miller, added. I once thought I knew Victoria very well, but after a lifetime together, I realized she was a complete stranger. This time, I didn't rush around in a panic like before. I just shook my head silently, watching Robert and Susan put on their act. I originally thought her parents were in the dark, but later, after having a few drinks with Victoria's uncle, he let the truth slip. From the very beginning, I was the only one who had been kept in the dark, like a fool. An hour later, Victoria finally appeared, looking just as guilty as she had in my previous life, Sincere. I'm sorry, something came up at work. I'm late. Don't be angry, okay? She sounded so soft and pitiful, like a kitten that had knocked over a glass of water, making one's heart ache for her. In my last life, my heart did ache, and I hugged her tightly, unable to say a single harsh word. This life, I just looked at her calmly and asked, "Do you really want to marry me?" Victoria froze, not reacting for a moment. Everyone else was bewildered, wondering why I would ask such a question. My dear son-in-law, what are you talking about? If Vicky doesn't marry you, who would she marry? Susan Miller interjected hurriedly. I ignored her and kept my eyes on Victoria. Do you really love me? If your heart belongs to someone else, I'll give you your freedom. After my last life, I had seen things clearly. I no longer had any feelings for Victoria. A glint appeared in Victoria's eyes. She asked, "Really?" I nodded, desperately hoping she would be the one to call off the wedding. That way, I wouldn't have to take the blame and could escape my tragic fate. "Silly girl, what are you talking about?" Susan tugged at Victoria's dress, shooting her frantic looks. Robert Miller also wore a grim expression, staring daggers at his daughter. They knew full well that if the truth came out, the Miller family's reputation would be ruined. But Victoria's heart was already racing, her mind filled with images of a beautiful future with Ethan Pierce. How could she listen to reason? She took a deep breath and said to me, "I'm sorry, Sincere. You're a good man, but you're not the right one for me. I don't want to marry you instantly." Everyone was stunned. Murmurs broke out across the room. I, however, felt a wave of relief. Robert Miller raised his hand and slapped Victoria hard across the face. "You wretched girl, marriage is not a game. Apologize to Sincere right now and let's get on with the wedding." His face was dark with fury. "Vicky, stop this nonsense," Susan said, pulling on Victoria's arm again. She then turned to the guests. "Please don't mind them." The two of them had a little fight. "Kids will be kids, she doesn't mean it." "I do mean it." Victoria's cheek was red, but she held her head high, defiant. "You all know who I love. Sincere has already let me go, so why are you still pushing this? Either way, I am not getting married today." With that, she turned and ran off. "Sincere, stop her, don't let her get away." Susan Miller pleaded with me, but I remained motionless. "To each their own," I said calmly. "I respect her choice." Hearing this, Susan's face went white, and she fainted on the spot. Honey, Robert Miller's eyes widened. He caught his wife and roared in the direction Victoria had fled. "You damned girl, your mother has fainted from anger. Aren't you coming back?" But Victoria didn't react, only running faster. Watching her retreating back, a small smile played on my lips. I ignored the Miller family's chaos and turned to leave. "Your freedom in exchange for my new life. A very good deal indeed." Back at the hotel, I explained the situation to my parents and relatives. My parents were furious and called Victoria's parents to demand an explanation. Robert and Susan Miller apologized profusely, promising they would find Victoria and bring her back. But my parents refused, demanding the return of the bride price, or they would see them in court. "Sincere, don't worry about it. Tomorrow, your uncle will introduce you to someone even better. It's her loss for leaving you. Don't let it get you down." "That's right, the next one will be better. What goes around comes around." Victoria Miller won't have a happy ending. All my relatives comforted me. I nodded, telling them I would be fine. That afternoon, I received a message from Victoria. "Thank you for letting me go. You can't force happiness. Even if we had gotten married, I would have regretted it when we got old, because you are not the one my heart loves." The events of my past life proved her right. I didn't reply. I blocked all of Victoria's contact information and, using my memory of the future, bought a particular stock. Then I booked a trip and, by chance, met a girl who shared my interests. She was beautiful and elegant, with the aura of a high-class lady. I never asked about her background. I only knew her name was Grace Wellington. We hiked the Appalachian Trail together. We climbed Mount Rainier together. We walked hand in hand through fields of cherry blossoms. We rowed a small boat through the canals of a picturesque water town. Together we created countless beautiful memories. When we parted, Grace asked me if we would ever have a chance to meet again. I said if it was meant to be, we would. We didn't exchange contact information and went our separate ways, just like in my previous life. That stock skyrocketed in a short time, and everyone was scrambling to buy it. I sold at the peak and used the capital to invite a few like-minded friends to start a design company. In my past life, I had wanted to start a business and even had a plan ready. But Victoria objected, so I had to shelve it. She wanted to open a beauty salon, so I poured all my money into it. The results were disastrous. The salon was poorly managed, and with the economic downturn, it lost money every month until it finally went bankrupt. Worse, we were $1 million in debt. On top of my regular job, I had to work 2 extra part-time jobs just to pay it all off. Throughout it all, I never let Victoria suffer any hardship. She was despondent because of the debt. I never criticized or blamed her, nor did I push her to get a job to help pay it off. Instead, I did everything I could to make her happy. She loved romance. I still brought her a flower every day and prepared gifts for every holiday. She was a flower in a greenhouse. I was her devoted gardener. Yet, a lifetime of devotion couldn't earn me a single moment of her loyalty. This life, I could finally pick up my dream again. With the experience of my past life, I had a much clearer understanding of market trends. I was always able to innovate and stay ahead of the curve. The company flourished. Countless partners extended olive branches, and our reputation grew. Meanwhile, Victoria's parents came to find me. They told me what happened after the wedding was called off. Victoria had rushed to the airport alone and given Ethan her entire life savings to help him start his business. This act moved Ethan, so he agreed to get back together with her and took her abroad to live with him. He also blocked all contact with her parents and disowned them. In the end, Robert Miller actually asked me to go abroad and help bring Victoria back. I laughed coldly and said that Victoria and I had broken up. Whether she lived or died had nothing to do with me. Her parents could only sigh and leave in despair. I felt no sympathy for them. They were reaping what they had sown. Half a month later, my dad said someone had set me up on a date. I readily agreed. When I got to the place, I saw a familiar figure. It was Grace Wellington. "Long time no see," Grace said, walking up to me with a smile. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't help but smile back, shaking her hand. "On a blind date, of course," Grace said, a playful curve on her lips. I was suddenly stunned. What a coincidence. Halfway through the sentence, I realized something. I stared at Grace, speechless. "It's exactly what you're thinking." Grace's smile grew even brighter. We found a table and chatted about everything under the sun. Before we knew it, evening had fallen. So we went to see a movie. Grace took the initiative to hold my hand, gave me a bouquet of flowers, and confessed her feelings for me. Forget me. Everyone around us was stunned. How could I pass up such a warm, proactive, and kind girl? I immediately accepted her confession and brought her home for dinner. Later, I learned Grace's identity. She was the only daughter of the National Car King. Although our family backgrounds were vastly different, her parents didn't look down on me. On the contrary, they admired my abilities and even invested $100 million in my company. With the support of Grace's expertise in business management, the company first entered the top 100 in the country, then went global. It was renamed the Morning Snow Group, but Grace and I were very low-key, rarely making public appearances. We became living legends. Time flew by. 6 years passed. I had a son and a daughter, and my life was happy and complete. Meanwhile, Victoria and Ethan returned to the country. They made a grand entrance, giving interviews to 30 media outlets in one day, and hosting a dinner for all their university classmates. The location was the city's most famous hotel, the Grand Pearl. Normally, I only wear a suit for important occasions like contract signings. This time was no exception to my usual casual dress. I walked into the Grand Pearl wearing a blue denim jacket, casual pants, and a pair of canvas shoes. Ordinarily, it would be difficult to get in dressed like this, but I had already acquired the entire hotel, so I could come and go as I pleased. My former classmates were all dressed in suits and ties. Just like at Victoria and Ethan's silver-haired wedding in my past life, I stuck out. Ethan sat at the head of a long table. When he saw me walk in, a playful smirk crossed his lips. Victoria beside him stared at me, her eyes turning a little red. "Sincere, we finally got you here." "It's been years. Vicky talks about you often," Ethan said with a smile. He glanced at Victoria after he spoke. She gave an unnatural, awkward smile and didn't dare say a word, like a dog that had been tamed. Victoria, the seeker of happiness. Had she been happy all these years? I doubted it. Sincere Clark, you don't have much to show for yourself, but you've got a big ego showing up last. Look at Mr. Pierce, so impressive, returning in glory. He started a company, the Liangyun Group, and is making a fortune. It's a good thing Vicky didn't end up with you, or she'd be sleeping on the streets by now. A few of Ethan's old cronies started belittling me. In the past, I would have been angry. Now I just smiled and found a random seat. After all, who cares what a few ants have to say? However, my silence was mistaken for shame. All right, that's enough, Ethan said, feigning mediation. He then turned to me. Sincere, thank you for not clinging on back then and knowing when to give up. Otherwise, Vicky wouldn't have been able to live such a happy life with me. It sounded like thanks, but it was pure mockery. It prompted his cronies to laugh along. Yeah, we were all so surprised when you let Sis Vicky go. After all, you were her #1 simp. You followed her everywhere like a clingy follower. Remember when Sis Vicky lost a truth or dare and tricked you into thinking she was in trouble at a karaoke bar? You ran over in a thunderstorm, only to find out it was a prank, and you weren't even mad. You even had a year-long Cold War with your parents just to marry her. They recounted my past. My face remained impassive. I just asked flatly, "Are you done?" The room fell silent for a moment. Ethan broke the awkward silence with a laugh, raising his glass to me. Sincere, don't take it to heart. Everyone's just joking. You were willing to give me your wife. Surely you have a little more tolerance than this. By the way, what are you doing for work now? How about I find a job for you? I'm back this time to discuss a partnership with the Morning Snow Group. I can introduce you. He looked at me with a condescending gaze, as if God himself were mercifully offering me a scrap of food. I couldn't help but chuckle. What a coincidence. I happen to work at the Morning Snow Group. Oh? Ethan paused, then raised an eyebrow and laughed along with his cronies. He stopped talking to me. He clearly thought I was bluffing. Of course, I didn't care. I drank my wine and got up to go to the restroom. When I came out, I found Victoria waiting outside. She looked timid, a stark contrast to her former self. I didn't want to say anything to her, but she grabbed my arm. I'm sorry, Sincere. I'm sorry for running off and leaving you alone back then. I hurt you and humiliated you. If I hadn't done that, maybe your life would be better now. Victoria stared at me, her eyes filled with tears and regret. Is that so? I shook my head and smiled. Perhaps if I had ended up with you, my life would be much worse. Thinking about it, I couldn't help but recall the tragic fate of my past life. My life now was truly wonderful. I'm sorry, Victoria said, clearly thinking I was still bitter and speaking out of spite. Whatever you want as compensation, I can give it to you, she continued with a sigh. No need. I don't want anything. I shook my head again. As I was about to leave, Victoria grabbed me again. Sincere, she stammered, seeming to have something to say but not knowing how. Then she threw herself into my arms. Just as I was about to push her away, Ethan appeared. Sincere Clark, how dare you seduce my wife, he roared. His shout drew the attention of all our former classmates. Pairs of mocking eyes turned on me as if watching a clown. Victoria looked panicked. Before she could explain anything to Ethan, he slapped her. You shameless wench, couldn't you have pushed him away? You're always talking about how much you love me, but when someone else wants to hug you, you just let them? Ethan snarled. Victoria hung her head, not daring to say a word. Then Ethan turned to me, his teeth gritted. What's wrong with you? Your life is a mess, so now you want to seduce Vicky again? Get her to spend money on you, is that it? That has to be it. Sincere Clark is a real piece of work. The moment he walked in, I noticed the way he was looking at Sis Vicky. We came here for a reunion. Sincere came here to find a sugar mama and rekindle old flames. The cronies chimed in. I smiled faintly. Ethan Pierce, you can't even control your own wife, yet you have the nerve to blame me. There are security cameras here. We can just check the footage and see what happened. Trying to smear my name? Not a chance. Did he really think I was the same weakling from my past life? Now, with a wave of my hand, I could make him lose everything. Check what footage. Who doesn't know what kind of person you are? Ethan sneered, taking 2 steps forward and poking me hard in the chest. Now, get on your knees and apologize to me, and bark like a dog a couple of times. Maybe then I'll forgive you. The old Ethan was two-faced. Now that he had a company, he couldn't even be bothered to pretend, and Victoria just stood there with her head down, not daring to speak the truth. Pathetic, really. I found it all rather amusing, more entertaining than a TV drama. What are you laughing at? Ethan glared, then ordered the hotel security guards, hold him down and make him apologize. His cronies grinned from ear to ear, waiting for the show. However, the guards just looked at each other, motionless. They even shot Ethan a look as if he were an idiot. What are you all standing there for? I booked the entire place today. I'm your most honored guest. Can't you even fulfill this simple request? Ethan felt humiliated and couldn't help but roar. But the guards still didn't move. Throw him out, I finally said. Without a word, the guards rushed forward and grabbed Ethan. Everyone was shocked, especially Victoria, whose beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. I'm the most honored guest today. How dare you touch me? Ethan was bewildered. Shut up. One of the guards slapped Ethan across the face and cursed, Are you blind? The man in front of you is our boss. At these words, Ethan's eyes bulged, and his face turned deathly pale. He was too shocked to speak. The cronies were terrified. Sincere Clark is the owner of the Grand Pearl Hotel? How is that possible? If he's the owner of the Grand Pearl, that means he's the president of the Morning Snow Group. Oh, my God, we really messed with the wrong person. They grew more and more panicked, finally dropping to their knees and begging for my forgiveness. I glanced at them, a small smile playing on my lips. I walked up to Ethan and looked down at him. From this day forward, you are blacklisted by the Morning Snow Group. We will never work with you. What? Cold sweat poured down Ethan's face. He quickly apologized. I'm sorry, Sincere. I was blind and didn't recognize your stature. Please be the bigger person. Just treat me like I'm nothing and let me go. He knew exactly what it meant to be blacklisted by me. It was equivalent to being blacklisted by every major company in the country. No one would ever work with him again. I couldn't be bothered to respond. I watched coldly as the guards dragged Ethan out. His pig-like squeals were useless. The classmates who had looked down on me now shamelessly crowded around, offering business cards and apologies. After I rejected them, they left in dejection. Only Victoria remained. She dropped to her knees with a thud. I'm sorry, Sincere, I was wrong. I never should have called off the wedding. Ethan is a womanizer. He cheats on me constantly, and he's an opportunistic speculator who racked up a mountain of debt playing the stock market. He only came back because he couldn't make it abroad anymore. He was planning to scam people for money here. He's a terrible person. She cried as she spoke, looking deeply remorseful. So, what does that have to do with me? You made your choice. Now you have to pay the price for it, I said, my face impassive. I added, besides, I'm married now, and my life is wonderful and happy. Hearing this, Victoria's expression froze. She started hitting her own head frantically. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I regret it so much, Sincere. I don't care about status as long as you're willing to save me from this hell. Take me away from Ethan. I'll do anything you ask. After her breakdown, Victoria clung to my leg like a dog. Actually, even if we had gotten married, you would have still run to Ethan decades later without a second thought. This is your fate, and it was mine. I smiled and gave the guards a look. The guards nodded and began to drag Victoria away. Sincere, save me, I'm begging you, Victoria cried out. I remained unmoved and walked slowly to the window. Outside, Ethan hadn't left. When he saw Victoria being thrown out, he rushed over, grabbed her by the hair, and began to beat her viciously. To prevent a tragedy, I had the guards pull them apart and send them to the police station to sort it out. There was no news that night. The next morning, Victoria climbed to the roof of the Grand Pearl Hotel, drawing a large crowd of onlookers. I rushed over. Victoria's hands were covered in blood and she was clutching a knife. She vividly described how she had killed that bastard Ethan. She was shouting my name. I was hesitating whether to show myself when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned and saw him again, the man in the trench coat. This time he lifted his head. His face was identical to mine. As I stared in shock, I heard Victoria scream, "I'm sorry, sincere, if there is a next life, I will not fail you." Then Victoria fell. The crowd erupted in chaos and screams. In the confusion, the man in the trench coat disappeared. I turned and stared blankly at the scene below, shaking my head and murmuring to myself, "In the next life, it's best if we don't meet at all." The end.